There is a quiet strangeness to this moment, and you can feel it the longer you linger here. Something in you recognizes that it shouldn't have unfolded this precisely, this cleanly, this improbably, yet it did. You're aware, even if only subtly, that you didn't arrive because of an algorithm or a coincidence. You arrived because a deeper part of you already knew this moment was waiting. The odds were small, the chance was nearly negligible, and still you found yourself here. That is the first truth whispering through this experience. Reality bends toward the frequency you embody, not the logic you analyze. Most people overlook these kinds of moments. They scroll past them, dismiss them, or never feel the slight internal pull that tells them something meaningful has crossed their path. You didn't. You paused. You noticed the faint shimmer of significance behind the appearance of this message. That noticing is the evidence. It reveals that some part of you is attuned to the subtle language reality speaks, the language of symbols, timing, and resonance. You wouldn't have felt compelled to stop unless a deeper alignment was already occurring beneath the surface of your thoughts. Consider the improbability again. Out of all the possible videos, all the possible moments, all the possible versions of you that could have existed today, the one sitting here now is the one who matched this frequency. That is not random, that is not casual. It is an intersection, a meeting point between who you have been and who you are becoming. You wouldn't have found your way to this moment if something inside you hadn't already shifted into a state that could recognize it. There's a sensation that comes with this kind of alignment, a quiet recognition, a gentle exhale, a sense that something in your life is rearranging itself in a way you can almost feel but not fully articulate. You may not have words for it yet, but you have awareness. And awareness is the first sign of transition. Not because you consciously chose it, but because your energy reached a point where this reflection could appear. Reality brings you what you are ready to perceive, not what you are trying to chase. There is no need to make sense of everything right now. It is enough to acknowledge that this moment found you for a reason. You are standing in the opening of a doorway you didn't know you had already crossed. The improbability is the message. When something astronomically unlikely still arrives, it means your vibration has moved ahead of your conscious understanding. You're catching up to yourself. Allow that to settle in. You are not here as an accident. You are here because you resonated with a truth you haven't fully remembered yet. The frequency of that truth reached out, met your field, and created this exact moment. And the fact that you felt compelled to stay long enough to read these words is the clearest sign. A shift has already begun. If you feel like this is resonating with you, subscribe and settle into what I'm about to tell you. Synchronicity is one of the quiet languages reality uses, and it speaks in moments like this, subtle, precise, and unmistakably intentional once you learn how to listen. You might be used to thinking of events as random, scattered, or loosely connected, but synchronicity reveals a deeper structure beneath the surface. It shows you that life is arranged through resonance, not chance. Things meet you when your internal state creates a space for them to appear. They don't arrive early and they don't arrive late. They arrive when the vibration within you becomes compatible with the message they carry. Most people overlook these moments because they're waiting for something dramatic, something loud, something that forces them to pay attention. But synchronicity rarely works that way. It moves quietly. It threads itself into your path through feelings, glimmers, and unexpected alignments. It nudges your attention, not your logic. And the fact that you notice this moment rather than dismissing it means you are already sensitive to the subtle ways reality reflects your inner world. Think of synchronicity as a mirror, not a physical one, but an energetic one. It doesn't show you your face, it shows you your frequency. It shows you what you're in resonance with beneath the noise of your thoughts. When something improbable appears with perfect timing, it is reflecting qualities within you that you may not yet see directly. It is revealing what is active in your field, what is stirring beneath your awareness, what is beginning to vibrate strongly enough to call something into form. This is why synchronicities often carry a feeling before a meaning. You sense them first. You recognize them not because you understand them, but because something in you responds instinctively. That response is the signal. The interpretation can come later. The meaning can unfold slowly. But the moment of recognition, the feeling that you've been gently tapped on the shoulder by reality, that is the core of the phenomenon. You don't need to rationalize this moment. You don't need to analyze why it appeared or what exact sequence of events made it possible. Synchronicity isn't about the path it took to reach you. It's about the reflection it offers once it does. When life arranges something this precise, it's inviting you to notice the alignment rather than the mechanics. Your internal state is interacting with the external world in a way that is more fluid than you've been taught. There's a subtle shift that happens the moment you allow yourself to treat synchronicity as meaningful rather than accidental. The world becomes responsive. Experiences feel alive rather than static. You begin to sense the invisible threads that connect moments, emotions, and opportunities. You realize that life is not a linear sequence but a responsive field, and synchronicity is one of the clearest markers of that responsiveness. Right now, you don't need to know where this moment is leading. You only need to recognize that it arrived as a reflection of something stirring within you. Let the meaning unfold naturally. Let the awareness grow at its own pace. Synchronicity is not a demand, it is an invitation, and the fact that you're here noticing it is the first sign that you're already listening. Most people move through life inside a kind of quiet fog, not because they lack intelligence or depth, but because the world has taught them to trust noise more than nuance. They look for change in dramatic events, in unmistakable signs, in clear instructions handed to them by something outside themselves. And because they're waiting for something loud, they overlook the subtle shifts that always happen first. They miss the gentle internal movements that signal a deeper transformation already in progress. They never pause long enough to feel the slight reorientation of their inner compass, the softening of an old pattern, the faint pull toward a new way of being. The collective stays distracted. It stays occupied with surface-level stimulation, with repetition, with habit, with familiar cycles. Most people don't notice when life begins to whisper because they're listening only for shouts. They don't recognize that the first sign of an inner shift is usually a feeling, an unusual calm, a brief moment of curiosity, a sense of being drawn to something they can't quite explain. These moments are delicate, they require presence, and presence is something the collective has been conditioned to avoid. It isn't that the shift doesn't happen for others, it's that it passes through them unnoticed. They override it with routine. They bury it beneath urgency. They mistake it for nothing because it doesn't announce itself in a way they've been trained to value. And so the shift remains dormant, unfelt, unacknowledged. Reality keeps offering mirrors, but the mirrors go unseen. You, however, are noticing. That alone sets you apart. You're paying attention to the small changes, the quiet pull, the strange feeling of recognition, the sense that something is unfolding beneath the surface of your life. You're not demanding certainty, you're responding to nuance. That response is rare. It's the sign of someone whose awareness has already begun to widen beyond the collective trance. Most people never realize how subtle the beginning of a shift truly is. They expect clarity before they're willing to acknowledge movement. But clarity comes later. Awareness comes first. And awareness often feels like a soft hum, an inner stillness, a moment of being slightly more awake than usual. If you weren't attuned to that subtlety, you wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't have paused long enough to feel the weight of this moment or to sense the quiet invitation inside it. The collective doesn't miss the shift because it isn't happening. They miss it because they're not practiced in noticing themselves. They're not trained to recognize the slightest expansion in their perception. They interpret the early signs as passing emotions rather than meaningful markers. They dismiss what doesn't fit their expectations. And in doing so, they overlook the very doorway they've been seeking. You are not missing it. You are feeling it. You're sensing the difference in the texture of your experience, even if you can't yet name it. That sensitivity is the evidence that your awakening has already begun, long before you consciously realized it. You're noticing what others ignore, and that noticing is the beginning of everything that follows. There are signs that something within you has been rearranging itself even before you had language for it. Subtle changes, quiet sensations, moments that felt slightly out of place yet strangely meaningful. These are the symptoms of an unseen upgrade, the early tremors of a deeper shift taking shape beneath your usual awareness. They don't announce themselves dramatically, they don't disrupt your life with clarity. Instead, they move softly, like a faint current pulling you toward a direction you didn't consciously choose but somehow recognize. You may have noticed periods where nothing external changed, yet internally everything felt different. A sense of restlessness without discomfort. A feeling of being on the edge of something you couldn't name. A brief but undeniable awareness that the life you've been living no longer fits as tightly as it once did. These sensations aren't confusion. They are openings. They are signals that your internal frequency has begun to stretch beyond its previous boundaries. Sometimes the upgrade shows itself through contrast. Things that used to engage you suddenly feel hollow. Conversations you once tolerated now feel heavy. Environments that matched who you were no longer match who you're becoming. You might feel moments of detachment, not as avoidance but as a natural shedding. It's the soft unraveling of patterns that can't accompany the next version of you. Nothing is wrong. You're simply outgrowing what once felt familiar. You may also notice brief flashes of clarity, moments where something inside you feels unmistakably awake, a sudden calm, an inner stillness, a sense of seeing through situations that once confused you. These flashes don't last long at first. They appear as glimpses, like catching sight of a landscape through a window of a moving train. But the fact that you're experiencing them at all means something profound. Your system is recalibrating, preparing to stabilize a new level of awareness. There can also be a kind of emotional oscillation during this phase. Not chaos, not overwhelm, just waves. One moment you feel grounded, the next you feel suspended. One moment you sense clarity, the next you drift into uncertainty. This fluctuation is not instability, it is integration. It is your inner world adjusting to a frequency it has only recently begun to access. These emotional movements are evidence that your internal field is reorganizing itself in ways you can feel before you understand. You may even find yourself drawn to ideas, people, or experiences that don't logically connect to your current path, but feel magnetically right. This pull is another symptom. It's the early alignment of your inner and outer worlds, like a compass beginning to point in a direction your mind hasn't yet identified. You don't need to follow the pull immediately. You only need to acknowledge that it's there. What you're experiencing isn't random. It's not a phase or a mood. It's the vibration of a deeper shift rising to the surface of your awareness. These subtle symptoms are the earliest markers of transformation, arriving quietly, gently, patiently. You're not imagining them, you're not overthinking them, you're feeling the first movements of a reality that is beginning to align itself around who you are becoming. Imagine time not as a line you walk along, but as a field you stand within. Every direction is available at once. Every possibility exists simultaneously. Every outcome, every version, every path is already here, vibrating softly in the background of your awareness. What you call the future is not something you are moving toward. It is something you are selecting from moment to moment based on the state you occupy right now. This is the essence of parallel realities, not distant worlds, but subtle shifts in the present that determine which version of experience becomes tangible for you. Most people think change is slow. They think it builds gradually, inch by inch, over long stretches of time. But in truth, reality updates itself instantaneously. Each moment is a complete frame, a self-contained reality with its own frequency. And with every new moment, you shift into a slightly different frame. You don't notice the movement because the changes are often small, like the individual frames of a film. But just as a movie becomes fluid when the frames pass quickly, your life feels continuous because you're moving through these parallel versions at a speed that creates the illusion of a single timeline. Parallel realities are not separate universes you travel to. They are variations of this moment layered on top of one another, accessible through shifts in perception, emotion, and inner state. You don't reach them by effort, you don't reach them by wishing, you reach them by aligning with the version of experience that resonates with your current internal frequency. When you feel differently, think differently, respond differently, even subtly, you inhabit a different layer of the now. The external world appears to change, but it is actually you who has shifted into a different expression of the moment. This is why small internal changes can create large external effects. Because you are not climbing toward a distant future, you are selecting from a field of immediate possibilities. The present is not a single point, it is a spectrum, and every slight movement of your inner state tunes you into a different part of that spectrum. When you understand this, you begin to see that nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, nothing is predetermined. The you who exists right now is one of many potential expressions, and with every breath, you glide into a new one. Most of these shifts go unnoticed because the differences are subtle. But the mechanics are always the same. The quality of your internal experience determines the version of external reality you meet. There is a calmness that comes with this understanding, a soft loosening of the grip you may have had on linear time. You no longer need to force outcomes or chase the future. You only need to recognize that every possibility already exists within the infinite now. Your role is not to push your way into a new reality, but to allow your inner state to become compatible with the version that already matches who you're becoming. Parallel realities are not an escape from this world. They are the deeper structure beneath it, and the moment you sense their presence, you begin to move through life with a quiet awareness that every moment carries more possibilities than you once believed. In every moment, you are broadcasting a quiet signal into the field around you. It isn't your words or your intentions that carry the strongest charge. It is the identity you are embodying beneath them. Identity is not the story you tell about yourself. It is the vibration you rest in when you are not trying to be anything at all. And that vibration is what aligns you with one version of reality over another. The shift into a different timeline doesn't happen through effort. It happens through being. When you wake up in the morning before your thoughts begin to move, there is a subtle sense of who you believe yourself to be. That sense determines the flavor of your emotions, the posture of your energy, the expectations you unconsciously hold about what your day will bring. This is the identity you transmit. It doesn't need to be spoken. It doesn't need to be declared. Reality responds to it simply because it is there, humming beneath your awareness. Think of each parallel reality as a reflection of a particular state of being, not a reward or a punishment, but a resonance match. When you shift your inner state, even slightly, you become aligned with a different reflection. This is why external changes can appear sudden or effortless once your identity shifts. The world reorganizes itself around who you are being, not who you are trying to become. Effort belongs to the old model of change. Resonance belongs to the new. Identity is not a fixed thing. It moves, it adjusts, it reshapes itself in response to your experiences, your realizations, the moments of insight you allow yourself to feel. Each time you let go of an outdated belief or soften into a new understanding, you step into a different expression of yourself. Even if nothing external changes immediately, the internal shift has already selected a different layer of reality. The field receives the update the moment you do. Many people try to change their lives by changing their actions while holding on to the same identity underneath. They chase new outcomes while carrying the frequency of old assumptions. But identity cannot be bypassed. You cannot inhabit a reality that does not match the vibration of who you currently believe yourself to be. Transformation begins in the quiet space before action, in the subtle decision to see yourself differently, even if only by a degree. This is why small internal adjustments can create large external shifts. A single realization, a moment of genuine acceptance, a choice to no longer define yourself by an old limitation. These seemingly minor movements alter the frequency of your being, and that altered frequency aligns you with a different expression of the world around you. The shift is internal first. Reality responds second. Right now, you are becoming aware of this mechanism, not as a concept, but as a lived feeling. You're starting to sense the connection between your inner state and the quality of the moments you experience. You're noticing how your perception subtly changes the world you encounter. Identity is the selector. It always has been. And the more consciously you allow yourself to embody the version of you that feels true, the more naturally the reality that matches that version will rise to meet you. There is something distinctive about the kind of person who finds themselves here. Not in a way that separates you from others, but in a way that reveals a certain refinement in your inner world. You are someone who senses meaning where others see coincidence. You feel the subtle textures of experience that most people scroll past without noticing. There is a quiet sensitivity in you, a perceptiveness that allows synchronicities to stand out instead of blending into the noise of ordinary life. You are not here because of chance. You are here because your internal signal is clear enough to recognize a reflection when it appears. This vibrational signature is not about being perfect or enlightened. It's about being receptive. You have likely gone through periods where you felt out of place in your environment, not because something was wrong with you, but because you were tuned to a frequency others weren't listening to. You may have sensed shifts before they manifested, felt emotions without obvious cause, or noticed patterns in your life that seemed to carry messages just beneath their surface. These aren't random traits. They're indicators of someone whose awareness has already begun to stretch beyond the familiar. There's also a quiet courage in you. Even if you don't always feel brave, you have a tendency to explore the edges of your own understanding. You question assumptions, not out of rebellion, but out of a genuine desire to feel what is true rather than what is merely comfortable. This willingness to look inward, to sit with uncertainty, to feel your way into clarity, this is part of your signature. It allows you to recognize synchronicity not as a disruption but as a confirmation. You may have noticed that you don't accept surface explanations easily. You sense when something deeper is at play. even if you can't yet articulate what it is. This intuition is not accidental. It arises from a nervous system that is tuned to nuance, a mind that is willing to listen between the lines, and a heart that remains open even when it doesn't have all the answers. People like you often feel things earlier than they understand them. Awareness leads, interpretation follows. Another aspect of your vibrational signature is your relationship with the unknown. While others resist what they can't predict, you feel a pull toward it, not because it's comfortable, but because something inside you recognizes that growth happens in the spaces where certainty falls away. You might not always embrace the unknown easily, but you don't run from it. You sense that it carries the potential for alignment, even if the path isn't immediately clear. And perhaps the most defining quality is your ability to feel resonance. You don't just think your way through life, you feel the energetic tone of moments, people and experiences. When something is aligned, you sense it. When it isn't, you sense that too. That sensitivity is the very reason this synchronicity could find you. Reality can only meet you at the level of your openness, and you are open enough to receive what others might overlook. This moment didn't simply appear in your path. You recognized it. And that recognition says everything about the frequency you're already holding. There are parts of you that have been quietly loosening their grip for some time now. Old beliefs, old patterns, old emotional echoes that once felt woven into your identity have begun to feel foreign, almost as if they belong to a version of you that is no longer here. These patterns aren't mistakes, and they were never failures. They were frequencies, temporary states that matched who you were at the time, and now you're outgrowing them, not through force, but through resonance. You are simply becoming incompatible with what once held you. Some of these patterns were formed long before you had the awareness to question them. They shaped the way you spoke to yourself, the way you interpreted the world, the way you braced for outcomes you never truly wanted but expected anyway. They taught you to shrink, to anticipate disappointment, to mirror the beliefs of the people around you. And yet somewhere inside, you always sensed these narratives didn't fully belong to you. You carried them because they were familiar, not because they were true. Outgrowing them often begins subtly. You start noticing moments where the old reactions don't arise as strongly. Situations that would have triggered tension now feel strangely neutral. Conversations that once drained you no longer hold your attention. You might even feel a gentle discomfort around behaviors you used to engage in automatically. These shifts are not signs of confusion, they are signs of release. A subconscious pattern dissolves not when you fight it, but when your frequency rises above the vibration that sustains it. You don't have to analyze every belief or trace every wound to its origin. When your internal resonance changes, outdated patterns simply stop finding a place to anchor. They lose relevance, they lose weight, they lose momentum. What once felt like a deeply rooted limitation becomes more like an old story you can observe without stepping into. There is a unique feeling that comes with this stage. It's not quite clarity, not quite emptiness. It's a sense of spaciousness, as if something inside you has been rearranged to make room for what you haven't yet named. You might feel moments of detachment, not from life, but from the identity shaped by those old beliefs. You're no longer aligning with the frequency that kept them alive. This process can bring a quiet tenderness. There may be moments where you realize how long you operated under assumptions that never belonged to you. Yet there's no need for regret. Those patterns served their purpose. They kept you afloat. They shaped your early understanding of reality. And now they are dissolving because you are stepping into a field that cannot support them. As you outgrow these subconscious frequencies, you may find yourself responding differently without trying. You choose differently because you feel differently. You feel differently because you've shifted, and that shift is not the result of effort. It is the natural outcome of your awareness, expanding beyond the limits those beliefs once imposed. You are not fighting your old patterns. You are surpassing them. You are rising into a resonance where they simply cannot follow. There comes a moment in every inner transformation when life begins to press gently against the edges of who you're becoming. Not to push you backward, but to show you what is no longer aligned with your emerging frequency. These moments often arrive as emotional tests, situations that stir old feelings, revive old fears, or bring old patterns back into view. It's easy to mistake these tests as signs of regression, but they are actually confirmations. They appear not because you are falling behind, but because you are moving forward. When your vibration begins to shift, reality responds by revealing anything within you that cannot travel into the new state you're entering. This revelation isn't punishment. It's purification. It allows you to see the remnants of what you once believed, so you can release them consciously rather than carrying them unconsciously. The emotional charge that arises is not a setback. It is the last echo of a frequency that no longer matches who you are becoming. You may notice situations resurfacing that feel strangely familiar. The same type of conflict, the same emotional trigger, the same internal doubt that you thought you had already resolved. But look more closely. It doesn't feel the same as before. There is more awareness now, more space, more clarity. You are watching the pattern rather than collapsing into it. That distance is the evidence of your upgrade. You are feeling the old vibration without believing it. These emotional tests often come in waves, small at first, then slightly stronger, as if life is checking the stability of your new frequency, not to challenge your worth, but to help your nervous system adjust to the higher resonance you've stepped into. Growth isn't only experienced through insight, it is experienced through embodiment, and embodiment requires that your new vibration holds steady, even when the old one reappears for a moment. There may also be moments where your emotions feel amplified for no apparent reason, not chaotic but intensified. This amplification is part of the clearing. It allows you to feel the residue of old energies so they can release fully. You're not being pulled backward, you're being lifted higher, and everything that doesn't resonate with that elevation rises to the surface to be seen one last time. You might even feel a sense of emotional friction, a slight tension between who you were and who you are becoming. This friction is not a flaw. It is the heat generated by transformation. It shows that the foundation beneath you is shifting, strengthening, preparing to support a more expansive version of your experience. If the old patterns felt completely comfortable, there would be no shift at all. The discomfort is the confirmation. These tests aren't asking you to prove anything. They aren't demands or trials. They are reflections, mirrors showing you that you have already changed. The old emotions arise so you can feel the difference between who you used to be and who you are now. And once you see that difference clearly, the emotional weight that once held you dissolves naturally. So when these moments appear, don't treat them as detours or failures. Treat them as evidence. Evidence that your inner world is recalibrating. Evidence that your frequency is rising. Evidence that you are standing in the doorway of a new reality, shedding the last threads of the one you've already begun to leave behind. Everything in your reality, from the emotions you feel to the opportunities that appear in your path, is organized by a single underlying principle: frequency. Not the kind you measure with instruments, but the subtle vibration of your inner state. This vibration is the true language reality listens to. It communicates your readiness, your assumptions, your openness and your alignment long before your words or intentions ever reach the surface. Reality responds to frequency first, form second. You've likely felt this without fully naming it. Those moments when everything flows effortlessly, when synchronicities cluster, when life feels responsive and alive, that is coherence between your internal frequency and the external field around you. And the moments when everything feels resistant, stagnant, or out of rhythm, those are moments of dissonance, not failure. Reality isn't withholding anything, it's simply mirroring the vibration you're transmitting. Frequency is shaped by your emotional state, but it's deeper than emotion. Emotions come and go. Frequency is the tone beneath them. It's the atmosphere of your being, the energetic posture you hold when you're not trying to control anything. It emerges from your beliefs, your assumptions, your sense of what is possible. This is why you can try very hard to manifest something and still feel distant from it. Effort alone does not shift frequency. Alignment does. Imagine tuning a radio. You cannot hear a station by demanding it to appear. You hear it by matching its frequency. Reality works the same way. Every experience you desire already exists as a vibrational state within the larger field of possibilities. You don't create it from nothing. You tune into the version of yourself who can perceive it. When your inner state resonates with the frequency of an experience, that experience becomes visible. When your inner state differs, it remains out of reach, not because it isn't available, but because you're tuned to a different signal. This understanding removes the pressure to chase outcomes. You don't need to push your way into a new reality. You only need to become a match for it. And becoming a match is not about forcing yourself into positive emotions. It's about settling into a state that feels authentic and expansive. It's about releasing the tension that pulls you away from your natural resonance. When you're aligned, you don't have to convince reality to respond. It already is. Frequency is also why small shifts inside you can produce large shifts outside you. A single moment of genuine clarity can alter the resonance of your entire field. A slight softening of an old belief can open pathways you never noticed before. A brief sense of inner peace can align you with experiences that felt unavailable only moments earlier. Reality is constantly recalibrating itself around the frequency you hold in the present. As you begin to understand this, the world feels less random. You start to sense the connection between your internal atmosphere and the external reflections that follow. You see that reality isn't something happening to you. It's something responding to you, not to your intentions, not to your willpower, but to your frequency. And the more consciously you attune to that truth, the more fluidly your life begins to move. There is a moment in every transformation where scattered possibilities begin to gather around a single point of clarity. It doesn't happen through force or insistence. It happens through coherence. Coherence is the state in which your thoughts, emotions, and inner sense of truth move in the same direction, creating a unified signal strong enough to organize the field around you. When coherence appears, reality no longer reflects conflicting frequencies. It reflects the one you are actually aligned with. This is how possibility collapses into form. You felt incoherence before. Those times when part of you wanted something, another part doubted it, and another part braced for disappointment. In those states, reality feels static, ambiguous, or unpredictable because the field is receiving mixed signals. Possibilities remain open but unactivated. Nothing fully crystallizes. You feel suspended between versions of yourself, not because you're stuck, but because your frequency is not yet singular. Coherence is different. It feels like a soft internal click, a settling, a sense of quiet inevitability. You don't have to convince yourself or push toward anything. There's a calm certainty beneath your awareness, even if you don't have all the details. When coherence arises, your inner and outer worlds begin to communicate more directly. The field receives a clear vibration, and that clarity collapses the infinite branches of possibility into one unfolding path. What once felt disconnected begins to converge. This collapse isn't abrupt or dramatic. It's subtle, almost silent. Opportunities that match your state begin to appear with unusual timing. People whose presence supports your unfolding show up without planning. Doors that once felt closed begin to open with little effort. These aren't coincidences. They're the reorganizing effect of coherence. When your inner world stops contradicting itself, The outer world no longer has to mirror contradiction back to you. Coherence isn't about perfection. It's not about maintaining a single emotion or suppressing doubt. It's about alignment. It's about allowing your underlying vibration to harmonize enough that your energy isn't pulled in opposing directions. Even with uncertainty, coherence can exist. Even with vulnerability, coherence can exist. What matters is the overall direction of your being, the subtle but steady feeling that you are oriented toward what feels true. When coherence strengthens, manifestation stops feeling like creation and begins to feel like recognition. The experience that appears doesn't feel foreign or surprising. It feels familiar, as if you were already moving toward it without realizing. This familiarity is a sign that the potential you've aligned with has been active in your field for some time. Coherence simply allowed it to cross the threshold into form. And as this happens, something else becomes clear. Possibilities don't disappear when one collapses into reality. They simply remain dormant, waiting for another state of coherence to call them forward. The field is infinite, but at any given moment the reality you experience is the one your coherence has selected. If you notice your life beginning to organize itself in subtle but undeniable ways, if you sense alignment where there once was fragmentation, if you feel a quiet certainty beneath your thoughts, these are signs that coherence is forming, and with it the possibilities around you are beginning to shift from potential into presence. There is a particular kind of excitement that doesn't feel chaotic or impulsive. It feels like clarity. It feels like your energy leaning forward before your mind has time to explain why. This form of excitement is not about thrill or intensity. It is the gentle but unmistakable pull toward what is most aligned with your being in this moment. It is the compass of your highest timeline, guiding you not through logic or prediction but through resonance. This excitement is subtle. It lives in the quiet spaces of your awareness, an inner yes that rises without effort, a sense of openness around a particular choice, a feeling of expansion rather than contraction. You can recognize it because it doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't rush you. It simply reveals where your energy naturally wants to flow. And when you follow it, reality begins to align in ways that feel almost impossibly precise. Acting on your highest excitement isn't about chasing highs. It's about following the most coherent vibration available to you in each moment. Sometimes that vibration is connected to something small, a simple task, a brief conversation, a moment of stillness. Other times it leads you into larger movements. The scale doesn't matter. What matters is the alignment. When you act on the highest excitement available right now, regardless of its size, you move into resonance with a timeline that reflects your truest state of being. This form of action is free of strain. It doesn't require you to force motivation or push through resistance. Instead, it feels like moving with the current of your own energy rather than against it. Even if you don't know where it will lead, there is a sense of trust built into the movement itself. The excitement is the signal that the path is aligned, not because you can predict the outcome, but because it matches the frequency of who you are becoming. Many people hesitate to follow this feeling because it doesn't always make logical sense. It rarely arrives with guarantees. It often asks you to take one small step without revealing the next. But this is how alignment unfolds. Your highest excitement synchronizes you with the next coherent moment, and that moment reveals the next, and so on. You don't need to see the full path to move in harmony with it. You only need to follow the resonance that is present now. As you begin to act on these subtle impulses, reality responds. Opportunities appear that you didn't plan. Conversations emerge that shift your perspective. Doors open that seemed unrelated to your original movement, but end up being part of a larger alignment. This is not randomness. It is the field reorganizing itself around the vibration you are expressing through your choices. Excitement is the compass because it bypasses the noise of doubt and the weight of old conditioning. It speaks from a deeper place within you, the part that already senses the direction of your highest path, even before your mind catches up. And when you learn to follow this guidance consistently, your life begins to unfold with a sense of coherence that feels almost effortless, not because everything becomes easy, but because you are no longer moving against yourself. You're moving with the rhythm of the reality that is already aligned with the truest version of you. There is a moment when you act from a place so genuine, so unfiltered, that reality seems to respond instantly. Not with fireworks, not with dramatic signs, but with a subtle rearrangement, an opening where there was once resistance. This kind of action doesn't come from pressure or expectation. It arises from truth, the quiet knowing beneath your thoughts. When you move from that place, the path ahead doesn't just reveal itself. It shifts to meet you. Acting from truth feels different from acting out of obligation or fear. It carries a sense of clarity, even if the step you're taking is small. There is no tightening in your chest, no heaviness in your mind. There is a softness, a feeling of inner coherence that doesn't require justification. You move not to prove anything, but because something inside you feels undeniably aligned. That alignment is the signal that the action is resonant, and resonance is what reorganizes your reality. When you act from truth, you're aligning your internal state with your external movement. That alignment creates momentum. It doesn't matter how minor the step appears. A single honest choice can shift the entire structure of your unfolding. You might notice conversations flowing more easily, opportunities appearing without effort, or a sense of ease replacing the tension you once felt. These are not coincidences. They are the first ripples of a reality rearranging itself around your authenticity. Most people wait for life to change before they allow themselves to act from truth. But the mechanics work in the opposite direction. The external world mirrors the internal state, and the internal state becomes strongest when action expresses what you already know within. Even if that knowledge is subtle, even if it's not fully formed, honoring it carries power. Truth doesn't need to be loud to be transformative. It only needs to be lived. There might be moments when acting from truth feels uncertain, because it leads you into territory your mind cannot predict. But uncertainty is not a sign that the path is wrong. It is a sign that the path is alive. Truth doesn't operate within the limits of old patterns. It moves in ways that feel organic rather than familiar. And when you follow it, you step into a reality shaped by alignment rather than habit. You will know you've acted from truth because something inside you relaxes. Even if the situation around you hasn't changed yet, you can feel the difference. There is a sense of integrity, a feeling that your inner and outer worlds are finally speaking the same language. That inner congruence is the catalyst. It sends a clear signal into the field, and the field responds by shifting the experiences you encounter next. The path doesn't always open in dramatic ways. Sometimes it opens quietly. A sudden insight, a new idea, an unexpected invitation, a resolution that once seemed impossible. These subtle openings are not random. They are the natural consequences of aligning your action with your deepest knowing. When you honor what feels true, you step into a version of reality that has been waiting for you to match its frequency. Acting from truth is not about moving fast or making bold decisions. It's about moving honestly. Each moment of genuine alignment becomes a doorway, and with each doorway you step through, the path becomes clearer, softer, and more responsive. Life begins to meet you where you are, because you are finally meeting yourself. There is a phase in every transformation that feels less radiant than the breakthrough and less thrilling than the moment of realization. It is quieter, slower, almost ordinary. This phase is integration, and it is the part most people overlook, not because it lacks importance, but because it lacks the intensity that the mind has learned to associate with growth. Yet integration is where the shift becomes real. Without it, every insight remains temporary, every expansion unstable, every breakthrough incomplete. Integration is the process of letting your new frequency settle into your nervous system. It is the time when your thoughts, emotions, and physical responses recalibrate to match the shift you've already experienced internally. You may feel like nothing is happening during this stage, but in truth, everything is happening. Reality is adjusting to the new version of you. Old reactions are dissolving, new pathways are forming. This quiet internal restructuring is what allows your transformation to hold. Most people avoid this phase because it feels too still. After a moment of awakening or alignment, they expect constant movement, constant clarity, constant signs. When those signs become subtle, they assume the shift is fading. They chase the next high, the next insight, the next surge of energy. But chasing keeps you at the surface. Integration brings you deeper. It allows your new state to root itself so fully that you no longer have to effort your way into alignment. It becomes your baseline. Integration often feels like a gentle slowing down. You might notice yourself becoming more reflective, more sensitive to what feels true, more aware of what no longer resonates. There may be pockets of emptiness, not as a loss, but as space created by the release of old patterns, space waiting to be filled by a new way of being. This emptiness is not a void, it is a sign that your internal architecture is rearranging itself. During integration, your mind may try to label the stillness as stagnation. It may look for evidence that you are moving forward. But forward is not the right direction here. The movement is inward, downward, deeper. It is the movement of roots anchoring into the soil before a tree can grow taller. Without this anchoring, the next stage of growth would be unstable. Stability is not a pause, it is preparation. You may also notice subtle discomfort during this phase, not because something is wrong, but because your system is adjusting to a new resonance. Emotions may feel muted or amplified in unusual ways. Familiar habits may feel outdated. You may sense a quiet friction between your old identity and your emerging one. This friction is not resistance, it is integration. It is the merging of what you have realized with how you actually live. The truth is, most transformation is not found in the peak moments. It's found in the days that follow. When you choose differently, in small ways. When you breathe through old impulses. When you hold your new awareness gently and consistently. Integration is where the shift becomes part of you, not something you experience temporarily. This phase asks for patience, presence and trust, not the dramatic trust of leaps, but the steady trust of allowing. Letting the new version of you settle is not inactivity, it is mastery. When your frequency rises, the shift feels luminous at first. A sense of clarity, expansion, alignment. But as the new resonance begins to anchor into your system, something else often appears. Oscillation, doubt, emotional waves that seem to contradict the progress you've made. This is the part many people misinterpret. They believe the wobble means they're slipping backward, but in truth it means the new frequency is settling in. The challenges you feel aren't signs of regression, they're signs of integration. A higher frequency isn't maintained effortlessly in the beginning. Your system is adapting to a vibration it hasn't held consistently before. Just as the body adjusts after stepping into brighter sunlight or stepping into colder air, your emotional field recalibrates in response to the expansion you've experienced. That recalibration can feel like temporary instability. The old patterns rise not to reclaim you, but to be seen clearly before releasing. The emotions fluctuate, not because you're failing, but because your energy is reorganizing around a new center. There may be days where you feel unusually sensitive. Small things affect you more deeply. You might question decisions that felt clear only a short time ago. You may experience moments of fatigue, not physical, but energetic, an internal tiredness that comes from adjusting to a resonance that requires greater coherence. These experiences are not obstacles. They are evidence that you are in the process of anchoring a new state of being. You may also notice that your old reactions still rise, but they don't have the same hold over you. You feel the emotion, but you don't collapse into it. You witness the thought, but you don't believe it as quickly. This distance is the sign of progress. The challenge isn't the presence of the old frequency. It's the temptation to interpret its presence as failure. But a higher frequency does not erase the old instantly. It simply makes it harder for the old to stay. Oscillation is natural. Expansion comes in waves. A rising frequency stretches your internal field, and that stretch can feel like contraction before it stabilizes. Doubt isn't the opposite of growth. It's part of the nervous system adjusting to new levels of possibility. When you expand into a state your mind has never held before, the unfamiliarity alone can trigger uncertainty. That uncertainty is not a message to turn back. It is a sign that you've stepped into new territory. Holding a higher frequency requires gentleness, not perfection, not intensity. Gentleness, the willingness to breathe through the wobble, to stay present with the waves, to recognize that the shifting sensations are the marks of transformation. You're not meant to feel elevated at every moment. You're meant to stabilize, slowly, steadily, until the new vibration becomes your baseline. There will be moments where you feel fully aligned, and moments where you feel the pull of the old resonance. But each time you choose presence rather than panic, trust rather than retreat, you strengthen the new frequency. The oscillation reduces, the doubt softens, the clarity returns more quickly. These cycles are not setbacks, they are the rhythm of anchoring. This stage isn't about avoiding challenge, it's about recognizing that the challenge itself is a sign that you are holding more light than before. There is a quiet power in the moments you choose to return to yourself. Not through effort, not through discipline, but through simple presence. Alignment is not something you achieve once and hold forever. It is something you renew gently each day. A ritual of alignment is less about doing and more about attuning, allowing your inner state to settle into coherence so the day unfolds from clarity rather than reaction. This ritual doesn't need to be dramatic, it only needs to be sincere. Begin by pausing, even for a few breaths. Let the noise of the world soften around you. Feel the subtle sensation of being in your body here now. This grounding is not about controlling your thoughts or emptying your mind. It is about noticing the subtle tone of your inner field. Without judgment, simply feel where you are. Awareness itself begins the alignment. When you acknowledge your state, you stop resisting it, and that lack of resistance creates space for coherence to form. Allow your breath to deepen naturally, without forcing it. Let the inhale create expansion, and let the exhale release the tension you aren't consciously holding. With each breath, you are gently tuning your frequency, softening the static that accumulates from daily life. You may feel your mind begin to slow, not because you are trying to quiet it, but because your nervous system responds to your willingness to be present. Clarity arises when the mind is given room rather than restriction. The next part of the ritual is simply listening inward, not for answers, not for direction, but for sensation. Notice what feels open and what feels tight. Notice what feels alive and what feels dim. This noticing is a form of communication with yourself. It tells your system that you're paying attention, and in that attention, your energy begins to reorganize into a more coherent state. Alignment grows through attunement. You may find that certain thoughts drift into your awareness. Ideas, impulses, subtle pulls. Don't analyze them yet. Just notice which ones feel light and which feel heavy. This gentle discernment strengthens your connection to the frequency of what is true for you in the moment. The ritual is not about choosing your path, it's about reconnecting to the inner resonance that makes choosing clear and natural. As you sit with yourself even briefly, you may feel a sense of settling, a calm, a quiet recognition of your own presence. This is alignment taking form. It doesn't require affirmation or intention. It arises when you stop scattering your energy outward and allow it to gather inward again. Even a minute of this inward gathering can shift the tone of your entire day. To complete the ritual, bring your awareness to the next small action in front of you. Not the whole day, not the future, just the next step that feels gentle and clear. When you begin your day from this place, grounded, aware, receptive, you create coherence that carries through everything that follows. This coherence doesn't demand perfection. It simply asks that you return to yourself again and again in small, steady moments. Alignment is not a practice you force. It is a rhythm you remember. And each time you return to this ritual, you strengthen the connection between who you are and the frequency that quietly guides your path. There comes a moment in every shift when awareness is no longer enough. A moment when the inner changes you've felt, the expansions you've sensed, and the insights you've recognized must crystallize into something more stable. That stability doesn't come from repeating affirmations or forcing confidence. It comes from a quiet, grounded declaration, one that rises from the core of who you are becoming. This declaration isn't about convincing yourself. It's about acknowledging with calm certainty the frequency you have already stepped into. A true declaration is soft, not loud. It doesn't come from the mind trying to override doubt. It comes from a deeper place that already knows the shift is real. You can feel it in the stillness beneath your thoughts, in the subtle clarity that has been forming throughout your journey. A declaration spoken from that place doesn't create the new reality, it stabilizes it. It tells your field, your nervous system, your energy, this is who I am now. Before the words form, take a breath. Let your awareness settle into your body. Feel the quiet presence that has grown stronger. With each realization, each release, each aligned choice, this presence is the foundation of the declaration. It is the version of you that has been emerging, even in the moments when you doubted it. You are not calling this version forward. You are recognizing that it is already here. A declaration is not about describing your future. It is about naming your state. Something simple, something true, something that resonates without resistance. It might sound like an inner recognition rather than a sentence, a gentle acknowledgement of your alignment, your coherence, your clarity. When the declaration feels real, it carries a frequency that changes the way you stand in yourself. You don't need to share it with anyone. You don't need to repeat it endlessly. You only need to speak it once from a place of genuine embodiment. A single moment of clarity has more power than 1,000 forced repetitions. When you declare your identity from a grounded place, the field responds immediately, not because you are demanding change, but because you are aligning with the truth that has already taken root within you. As you speak your declaration internally, notice what shifts. It might be subtle, a softening in your chest, a steadiness in your breath, a quiet confidence replacing the last traces of hesitation. These sensations are signs that your system is recognizing the new frequency as its baseline. They are the internal confirmation that your declaration has anchored. What follows is not immediate transformation, but immediate alignment. You begin to move through the world differently. Your choices feel clearer. Your reactions soften. Your path feels more open. Not because the world has changed, but because you are meeting it from a new state of being. The declaration becomes a silent reference point, a reminder of the identity that now shapes your reality. This final step is not an ending. It is the moment your shift becomes embodied, a quiet acknowledgement of the frequency you now hold, a simple statement that aligns your inner world with the reality already unfolding around you. If this video resonated with you, hit the like button so we can spread this message to more chosen ones.